Hello, Huntley Hotspurs, and I am back. Um, yeah, we've had a couple of days to reflect on the transfer window and to let a few stragglers trickle in. Deadline day signings have also come in. Um, yeah, I think it's fair now and to give a reflection of the transfer window as a whole. Um, yeah, I think it was basically what I expected. I was quite worried we'd be in for a very underwhelming, boring transfer window the first 2 months. But to its credit, in the last month, August, things really amped up. There were a whole bunch of transfers. In the last transfer week alone, there were 55 transfers. And the week before that, there were 25. So, yeah, I mean, 80 transfers from just the last 2 weeks of the window. So it really did amp up a lot. And deadline day was just insane this year. There must have been like 20 plus deals that were just on deadline day. So yeah, it was impressive. Impressive end to the window. But yeah, what were my thoughts on it? So I think it's best to put it into three different categories. One is just ranking the big six and what I call the up and coming fours transfer windows. Big six, obviously, we all know, but to up and coming four, I've seen other pundits and YouTubers also put them out as the up and coming four. So I know I'm not alone, and that's Newcastle, Aston Villa, Brighton, and West Ham. Yeah, they're basically the four that want to disrupt the big six. And yeah, I think let's go into actually ranking the transfer windows, starting from number 10, who had the worst out of those clubs, to number 1, who had the best transfer window out of all those clubs. So yeah, let's start off the list at number 10. Number 10 has to be Newcastle. Look, they kept Mark Gahey, which was good. They kept Isak, which was good. They kept Anthony Gordon, that was good. But that's about all I can really say for them. Lloyd Kelly on a free was probably smart business. He's good value for money. Can play as a left back or a left centre back. Not someone, really not somebody I would have minded having at Spurs, actually, given our backline sometimes. So yeah, fair play to them for getting him so quickly on that free transfer. Basically right at the beginning of the window. So fair play to them. But other than that, there's nothing really that Newcastle fans can be excited about compared to their last two windows. Obviously, they had one of their stakeholders pull out of investing in them, so they have slightly less money than what they did the last two seasons. They also got themselves into financial problems from the last two windows, so they kind of needed to pay back some of that, so they couldn't really go out and spend a lot of money, and their focus more was actually on just getting a couple of names out. And they kind of just, wanted as much as possible to not have those names be Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon and Bruno Guimaraes, right? Those were the three. Those are the names they really just didn't want out. And they kept them. So fair play to them. But there are other signings. They brought in a very old veteran goalkeeper who's past his prime. They brought in Vlachodimos, who's not as old, but he's not really near the level of what they're wanting from Nottingham Forest. In a deal, what seems like it was just to get FFP sorted between the two of them. They brought in a very young, inexperienced William Osula from Sheffield United, who barely even played for them last season, and they finished last in the league, and he didn't actually score any goals for them last season in the league. But if Callum Wilson is injured like he is now, he's kind of their backup striker for Alexander Isak, William Osula. So that's a bit concerning for them. Yeah, it wasn't good. They hackled the whole summer over getting Mark Gahey from Crystal Palace. They were told quite early on that it's going to take a very substantial offer, and even later on, in going into the last month of the window, they were told no, 70 million. And yeah, 70 million is a lot of money, and rightfully so. They weren't really willing to pay that. They couldn't with their financial situation. But they just kind of didn't really look elsewhere. They kind of just asked how much Gay was, and Palace told them that the amount, and they just said, "Oh, okay, well, I guess we just get no one then." Was that a smart strategy? Time will tell, but maybe not. I mean, they still had enough to beat Spurs on the counter 2-1, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think their window was impressive at all. I'm gonna have to put them last. Yeah, I think their window is like a E, hey, like a E, like honestly. Okay, ninth. Who had the second worst window, but better than Newcastle? I think Liverpool. I think if Liverpool hadn't made the last two signings they did, they would have been 10th. But Mamadashvili is a quality goalkeeper replacement for Alisson, and for rotation potentially with Alisson from next season. Obviously not one for the here and now, though. Bit of a strange transfer, that. And then Federico Chiesa is absolute quality. That's a very good buy, and that was only made in the last few days of the window for them. So that really kind of did make or break their window to an extent. And because for them, they had signed nobody, basically. Well, not basically. They'd signed nobody for their first team in the whole window. And they waited for the last week to get those two over the line. And of those two, only one is joining from the season. So technically, they only made one signing for the first team for the season. That's leaving themselves very short. But Chiesa is a very high-quality profile of player. Injury record and his form post a big injury he had a season or two ago hasn't been as great as what it was back in, let's say, Euro 2020 when Italy won the Euros. But yeah, if there's still a player in there, that's a pretty good acquisition. And for such a low amount of money, less than 15 mil to get Federico Chiesa, who about 2-3 years ago was worth close to 100 mil. So fair play to them. And Juventus didn't want him anymore. It was very clear he wasn't part of their plans. The manager even said it. So clear, good play from Liverpool for waiting and just saying, okay, we'll pay that money and let's get him over the line. Yeah, good deal for them. 9th, I'd say. I'd probably give them, I think I'll give them a D. 8th place. 8th place of the Big Six. I went for Manchester City. Look, they didn't do that much, but they didn't need to. They're such a good squad. But if we're ranking purely based on transfer windows, they're not the top. They brought in Savio, but that was a deal that was already arranged in January. It was a very easy deal for him to make because he was part of their whole ownership group anyways. But he looks like he'll be quality, so that's decent for them. And then basically Gundogan returning in a very strange, almost very anticlimactical way. He has this big send-off where, he's won a treble with City. He scored both of their goals to overturn a deficit so they would win the Premier League title in the season he leaves. And it's kind of like this whole big thing, and he bows out in this majestic way, being Pep's first signing. And now he just returns. And like people are ironically saying, he could end up, provided we don't know what happens in the January market, but if City don't sign anyone in the January market, Gundogan could be Pep's first and last signing, which would be quite a strange statistical anomaly. But yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He's a very good player. He's one of the top 10 midfielders in the league, I'd say. Yeah, that's another video I'll be doing next week. I'll be discussing the top 10 midfielders in the league among some other positions. But yeah, he's good, but it's just a bit anticlimactic. So yeah, and then that Kevin Mubama guy from West Ham, who's basically now gone from warming the bench at West Ham to basically warming the bench to an even more extreme level probably at Manchester City, unless he really does start getting trusted to be the backup to Haaland. But to take up from Alvarez, that's a big one to try and fill. It's a big player's shoes to fill, and that was a decision that kind of surprised me. Was City not really playing too much hardball with Atletico Madrid to get Alvarez? Atletico just basically paid the money City wanted, and City didn't even, try and say, oh no, but we wanted a bit higher. They were just like, okay, you're giving us that money. Cool, you got him. And Alvarez as well was just like, okay, cool, I'm going to Atletico Madrid. And he was happy about it. He's happy about it. Yeah, I think that was interesting to me. But City they have that luxury. They can sell an elite player that most other clubs would not sell just because they've got the depth. But yeah, as far as transfer windows go, I would say probably 8 for them. I think I'd probably give them a C plus. No, not a C plus. I'd say a C minus for them. Yeah, a C minus for Man City. 7th, I've gone for Aston Villa. Aston Villa's window started off very well. I'd say for like the first month and for the first half of the transfer window, I would say they were easily top 3 or top 4 in terms of this 10. But a lot of clubs kind of caught up to them from the second half of the transfer window. They kind of blew very hot, Aston Villa, and then kind of faded away a bit. Whereas a lot of other clubs were very quiet in the beginning and then just really heated up towards the end. But yeah, I mean, they lost some important players. Douglas Luiz went to Juventus, big player for them. Surprisingly so, sold Moussa Diaby only one season after he joined, after he was one of the most raved about wingers coming into the Premier League last season. It was seen as such a coup for Aston Villa to get him. And now he's just gone to Saudi quite prematurely. And they've brought in a few guys. Onana looks like a quality buy from Everton. I think that's going to be very solid for them. They kept hold of John Duran. They played ridiculous hardball for both Chelsea and West Ham. And I think he'll be a quality backup striker this season for Ollie Watkins. And they brought in two youngsters, Enzo Barrenechea and Samuel Ealing Jr. from Juventus as part of the swap deal with Douglas Luiz. But you really do get the vibe that wasn't really like signings the club wanted. It was just so that they could get the money and they could get the deal done with Juventus for Douglas Luiz, because they've immediately sent those two out on loan. So yeah, clearly didn't really want them for the immediate project. And I mean, I think Onana is obviously their marquee signing. And they signed a couple more. But yeah, I would say the only thing is, I'd say they recruited okay, but I'm not sure if they really upgraded their squad. I feel like they've just replaced key members of the squad with different key members. And let's see, Onana and Luiz are kind of two different players. Luiz offers a bit more creativity and attacking, but Onana probably is a bit better as a pure defensive midfielder, and he has actually copped up with 2 goals in his first 2 games. So it looks like he will be a quality buy for them. Quality buy for Aston Villa. So fair play. Managed to keep Emi Martinez yet again for another season. Have kept Ollie Watkins, tied him down to a new contract. So yeah, I think they're all right. I'd probably give them a C. I'll give them a C. All right. 6th. 6th, I'm going to put Arsenal here. Quite a lot of people have them a bit higher up, but I don't really see why. They should have brought in a striker. If they'd gotten Victor Osimhen, Dusan Vlahovic, Victor Gyökeres, Ollie Watkins, Alexander Isak, one of those guys, they could even be at the top or the second best in this entire list, but they didn't do that. They got the only attacking reinforcement they made was a loan with no option to buy for Raheem Sterling, who was now unwanted by Chelsea. I think he'll be okay for them. I think he'll be decent. I don't think he's going to be as incredible as what some people are amping up to maybe be. People are saying, oh, well, everyone's doubting him, but he's going to be absolutely amazing. I don't think he's going to be absolutely amazing. I think he'll do a job for them, though. I think he might give Saka some much-needed rest from certain games. But is he a lot higher quality than what Arsenal already have? I wouldn't say so. I think he matches that quality, but he's not, for the overall squad, he's not like a big upgrade in any real position there for them. But yeah, and he's become a real journeyman now, Sterling. He's gone from Liverpool to City, to Chelsea, and now to Arsenal. Only needs Tottenham and Man United to complete the big six. I think, but they should have maybe brought in a striker, a proper number 9, to at least give Havertz and Jesus a bit of a break, or, if one gets injured, then you at least, you have, the other one doesn't have too much pressure put on them. But yeah, I think Calafiori was a very solid addition for them. He is a very good left back and left-footed centre back. Mikel Moreno came in as one of 2 marquee signings, the other one being Calafiori, and he already got injured in training by Gabriel falling on top of him at training and breaking his shoulder. That's quite extreme. And now he's out for the next, I think it's a minimum of 2 months now that Moreno is out for. So without even making his Premier League debut, he's already injured till, middle of November, December time. So that's a big knock for them. And that was their 2 major signings, and then the loan deals for Sterling and for Neto, the goalkeeper from Bournemouth, on deadline day. Neto is Neto an upgrade on Ramsdale? They let Ramsdale go on a permanent deal to Southampton. Should they have rather just kept Ramsdale? I think so. I think probably if he was happy to stay there, they probably should have kept him, because I don't think Neto is an upgrade on Ramsdale. I don't even think he's an equivalent level to Ramsdale. I think he might even just be a bit of a downgrade. And so they're just really hoping Raya just completely stays fit, no injuries, no poor performances, because now the guy that they have coming up after him, I wouldn't be as confident if I was them having him in goals what I would have been if I'd had Ramsdale. So, yeah, mixed bag, I think, Arsenal. But I think they'll really be lamenting not getting a top-level striker. But yeah, sick for them. 5th place, I've gone for... so for Arsenal, what would I give them? I think they deserve, a C+. All right, 5th place. I went bang in the middle, Tottenham Hotspur. So Tottenham and Arsenal, I've put basically, they've been mid in this transfer window. They've blown some good ones, but there are a couple of areas where they may be cold. Tottenham, I think, just edges it for me rather than Arsenal, because we did bring in a striker, a proper number 9, which is what we needed. I think he'll be pretty solid. Some people are a bit underwhelmed after, initially links with Tony, Gyökeres, Vlahovic from a few years ago, even some very small silent whisperings of Victor Osimhen. That was never going to happen, though. And to get Solanke. But I think, looking at his play style and the way he presses, press being the operative word, and links up play and runs in behind, I think he was actually the perfect Ange-style striker. He's not one of the most elite strikers of the ball in the entire world, but he presses, and he does have that pace to play in the Ange system. And yeah, a pity that he's now been injured for the last 2 games. But I think I think the coaching staff and fans are hopeful that he will be fit to play again against Arsenal. Touch wood. All right, but and then we brought in a winger. Not like a very elite, high quality winger, which a lot of people really wanted. We brought in Odegaard to, just like Mikey Moore, or just like, Solomon or Johnson. They're kind of young wingers that are still getting into it a bit, that you need to build up. And I think a lot of Spurs fans wanted like that ready now winger. A lot of Spurs fans were asking for Federico Chiesa. I think that would have been a pretty solid deal. And before that, everyone's first choice was Pedro Neto from Wolves, which I think would have been absolutely incredible in Ange's system. Although his injury record would have been a bit concerning, especially the intensity that Ange plays. You might have found Neto being even more on the sidelines, which for someone who only played, who's only in general plays about 25 to 30% of a league season, if you then put him in an even higher intensity Ange system, he might even play like 12%, 15% of the season. So then that really wouldn't be good value for money, considering Wolves wanted about 60 million. I think it was 60 to 65 million for Pedro Neto. Basically paid around the same, if not a few million more than what we paid for okay, not a few million more. They paid around the same amount, Chelsea, for Pedro Neto as what we paid for Dominic Solanke. Yeah, so, and then we got Wilson Odobert just kind of out of the blue. And people were like, oh, well, it's just a panic buy. It's just a quick, easy deal that Levy gets to do. But looking at the stats and what people have said, and we've analysed him a bit more in depth, he does actually fit the play style of Ange and what he wants from a winger. He does dribbles in the box. He does take on his man. He can have good pace on him. The only thing that needs work with him is his finishing, but that can come down to inexperience. He can work on that. And unlike players maybe like Timo Werner, who are a bit more set in their ways, they're older now, the finishing ability is not really going to come. Werner's always going to have the pace and the dribbling, but being able to take on his man and finish, he can't really work on. Whereas this guy at such a young age, he already takes his man on, and if he gets just a bit older and gets a bit more experience, he probably will be able to work on his finishing. A couple more sessions in the training ground, and he's probably going to be better at that. So then we could have a real bargain in our hands for not a lot of money at all in today's market for a winger, especially a young one who has Premier League experience. Although that Premier League experience is a 19th place Burnley, but experience is experience. So I think it's fair. And then, of course, brought in Archie Gray from Leeds. He's being raved about by most people. I think he could be a good prospect, but he is definitely one more for the future. But I think he will be developing this season. We'll just be seeing a lot of development, and maybe we'll see a few flashes here and there of real star quality. But I think mostly it will just be getting his confidence up and giving him more game time so that he gets used to the system and used to playing at this level. Lucas Bergwall, obviously we signed him in January, but he only came in now, so technically he could be counted as a new signing for now. He looks confident, even at only 18 years old, same as Archie Gray. He looks like a man a young man who's composed on the ball. He has good creativity, has a very Maddison-esque type way about playing, and could end up being pretty good cover for Maddison. Can play as the 10 or in the 8. I think fair play to let him not just immediately go out on loan and to actually give him a bit of a shot here. I think him and Gray can really benefit from just having a couple of runs of games and coming on in latter stages of games throughout the season, and even maybe starting in some of the lower tier games in the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup. I think Bergwall will be okay. I think maybe we did get lucky with the signing. I mean, there's a reason probably that Barcelona were looking at him. Can't ignore that. And then also we brought in another winger, Young Min Yok, who's only joining in January from Gangwon FC in the Korean League. Look, I can't say too much about him. Haven't really watched too much about him. Haven't seen too many people analyze him yet. But I think the jury's out on whether he's going to be a really quality addition or whether it might just end up being a bit more of a PR move for if Son moves on soon. We still got another South Korean in the squad that can come through and get the fans enthused. Last South Korean we signed didn't end up too badly. So, let's see. Very cheap, young up and coming, yet again, only 18 years old. So we stockpiled on 3 18-year-olds this season. That's putting a lot of faith in the future, but maybe not investing quite right in the here and now. And I think that's why I'd have to put us in the middle of the window. In terms of experienced players who brought in, it's Timo Werner and Dominic Solanke, who are the same age. Timo Werner divides opinion greatly. I still think he's an okay level player. I think he is able to play at the level we want if he can stay injury-free. I think he does exactly what he does what it says on the tin. He plays on the wing and runs down and tries to create chances. I think that's all Ange really wants out of him at this stage in his career. So I think he's doing that, and that's clearly why Ange decided it was okay for us to extend the loan by another year and still include that option to buy. I think Ange can see something in there if he just manages to stay fit. And then, on Solanke, obviously, like I've discussed before, I think that was a pretty quality buy. Touch wood, he performs quite well for us this season. And then, obviously, we did a lot of sales. which I think was good. We got rid of a lot of deadwood. A lot of them were just loans though, but yet again they're still off the books. And for some of them, we got the other clubs to cover a part of their wages, so that also saved us some money. Outright sold quite a few players, including Emerson Royale, Giovanni Lo Celso, Eric Dyer permanently went to go join Bayern. Oliver Skip went to Leicester. Solomon is now on Leeds on loan. So yeah, I think we did okay in that respect. Yeah, I think we did okay in that respect. And then we also even included the strangest transfer I've ever seen in my life, but got ourselves the first option to buy a player from Real Betis, Johnny Cardozo, for what I believe is basically about a 2-week window in next summer's transfer window. So at the end of the season only, for about 2 weeks, at some point in that window, there's a clause where we can activate for around 25 million, I think is the reported figure. We can go and get that Cardozo guy. Cardozo is a 21 going on 22-year-old, yet again, young, fits Andrew's profile, can play as a 6 or an 8, and typically has actually been playing more in the 6 position for Real Betis off the bench. And look, that could solve some issues. I think this season we're going to try and get by with Basuma, Bentancur, Gray to be in that 6 position. But if we start seeing that there's maybe not quite the depth or basically the quality is not quite there, then I think maybe if he develops over the next year at Real Betis, to get a quality number 6 at the age of 22 going on 23 from a major league would be a bit of a coup, because his market value could have risen by then if he has a good season at Betis this year. So then 25 more for him at this time next year could be quite a steal. So yeah, I think that's maybe a clever deal, and I don't think we would have put it there unless there was some genuine interest in his profile and in the player himself. I don't think Ange just throws at anybody. He really wants players that fit his exact style. But yeah, so I think 5th for Tottenham. Yeah, 5th. I would give them a B-. Yeah, a B-. Okay, 4th place. I've gone for Chelsea. I hate to put Chelsea above Spurs in transfer windows, but I think they did maybe make a bit more additions that are ready for the here and now in their squad as opposed to youth, but they did obviously get a lot of youth. Like flip tons of youth. Absolute flip tons of youth. To a ridiculous extent. They sold a flip ton of people. They bought a flip ton of people. But one of the reasons why I put them this high is they did bring in some really quality players. Tosin Adarabioyo on a free from Fulham is a steal for an English centre-back who's got Prem experience. A few years worth of Prem experience at that. Pedro Neto from Wolves, if he can stay relatively injury-free, is an absolute wonder of a deal for them. Jadon Sancho on a loan with an option to buy. If he becomes more of the player that he was at Dortmund a couple of years ago, they could also have another very good acquisition on their hands. Yeah, I think they actually made some Dewsbury Hall from Leicester. Yeah, I think they've actually done okay. They've added a lot of depth for goalkeepers, probably too much depth to be honest. But yeah, that's another debate. But yeah, I think they've done okay. I think they've brought in a few good options. I think they would have liked to get the Victor Osimhen deal done on deadline day. But yeah, I mean, I think it was always going to be a bit of a tricky one with Osimhen not really willing to reduce his wages. And you can imagine if the number of players Chelsea have to pay to also then pay someone the amount that Osimhen wants, they probably then can't afford it. Even someone as wealthy as them probably can't afford it. And he was unwilling to reduce his wages for Chelsea. So yeah, I think if he really wanted to go to Chelsea desperately, he probably would have cut his wages. So I think that might have been a sign for Chelsea as well, in that pursuit. But yeah, Cole Palmer's still there, signed a extended contract. Nicholas Jackson, controversially, maybe has signed an even longer contract with them. Brought in a young striker, Marc Guéhi from Barcelona, who can come through, and they've also opted not to send him straight on loan. They've put him into the first team straight away. So yeah, I think they're probably going to be all right, and I think their window was pretty solid. Um, I think I'd give them a B. All right, top three windows. Okay, the big boys who had really good windows, guys. Number three, Brighton and Hove Albion. What a window they had! What a window! Um, wow, they really just they brought in a lot of really good caliber of players. Matt Viffer from Feyenoord, very good defensive midfielder. Ferdi Kagdioglu from Galatasaray can play left back, can play in the midfield as well, can even play on a wing or in a wing back position if you want. Very good player with some experience on him. Yakuba Minte from Newcastle looks absolutely electric. I think that's why Newcastle might end up progressing. Was very good at Feyenoord last season as well. Yeah, and those are Matt O'Reilly from Celtic, who unfortunately is a very good player, but unfortunately is now injured for the next 3 or so months, but will be really good, I think. Yeah, they've really done well, and that's only just a few. They made a lot more signings, but those are just from the kind of names I'm mentioning there. I think a lot of those names wouldn't have been completely out of place at one of the big six clubs. So yeah, I think fair play to Brighton. They've really backed this new Bundesliga 2 manager who's come in. And I think it shows in their results so far. They seem to be doing pretty well. And he's got a really good squad on his hand now, I think, Brighton. They've managed to keep guys like Matoma, Evan Ferguson, João Pedro, Danny Welbeck, still there providing experience. James Milner is still there providing some experience. Yeah, I think they really are. I think they're really in a good place, Brighton. I think they can definitely disrupt that big six this season. They can challenge for that seventh, eighth spot quite easy, if I'm honest. Yeah, fair play to them. Really good window for Brighton. I would give them an A minus. Okay, number two, second best transfer window. I'll have to give this to Manchester United. Manchester United, I think, so far their results haven't really shown it on the pitch, and the way they're playing isn't really showing it on the pitch. But they did have a very good window. Ten Hag can't say that he wasn't back this window. The fans can't say that the ownership didn't do what they needed to this summer. They really did. They brought in De Ligt as a centre back. They brought in Lenny Yoro as a centre back. They brought in Nazem Mazraoui as a right back. They brought in Manuel Ugarte as a defensive midfielder. And they brought in Joshua Zirkzee as a striker / second striker player. So yeah, I think those are very good signings. I think not as many signings maybe as some of the other sides that are on here, but I think the quality of their signings, each signing they made was elite level. That's the thing I can say about Man United's transfer business. Xerxes maybe is a somewhat unknown entity, but I still think he's probably going to end up being a really good player. So they really didn't go for very risky moves. I think they went with moves that are smart, moves that you kind of know there will be success with them. That they can't flop entirely, any of these players. I'd be surprised if any of these players just completely flop. I think all of them will, at the very least, do okay. Whether Ten Hag's the right man to implement these kind of players, I'm not so sure. I think a lot of fans rightfully have reservations about that. But the players, you can't argue that they brought in, are good quality players. They really are good quality players. Yeah. And then number one, it has to be West Ham, guys. West Ham basically upgraded or put depth on every general part of the pitch. They increased their goalkeeper depth, bringing in Wes Foderingham from Sheffield United, their first bit of business, on a free. And he was actually one of the better parts of Sheffield United last season, so that will probably be good squad depth. Backline, they brought in Jean-Claire Todibo on a loan with an option. I'm not sure whether there's really an option to buy. There probably will be something negotiated at the end of the season, but they brought him in excellent right-footed centre-back that Man United were even looking at it, wanted to get at one point, that Spurs were looking at in the January window until we turned our attentions to Dragosin. Max Kilman from Wolves, a left-footed centre-back. So there they go. They've got a left and right immediately for a new left and right centre-back pairing. Right back, they brought in Aaron Wan-Bissaka from Man United. Heaps of Prem experience and high level, playing at a high level experience. Now with maybe a little bit less pressure on his shoulders, he can really shine through. Middle of the park, they got rid of Ward-Prowse but brought in Carlos Soler on loan with an option to buy from PSG. So that's a good quality of caliber of player they're getting there. They brought in attack. They brought in Crescencio Somerville, one of the best players for Leeds from the last 3 years, consistently. They brought in Nicholas Füllkrug from West Ham. From Borussia Dortmund, who's been a goal machine for them last season. And to be fair, he's one of the underrated strikers, I think, in football, where he's not really a name you think of very readily, but he always pops up. Even at his age of 31 now, it pops up. So I think that was a pretty solid piece of business. Guido Rodriguez, who I think maybe I underrated him a little bit when I gave my initial rating of him, because apparently he's actually quite a solid midfielder, particularly in like the 6 role. So yeah, maybe I should have given him a bit more credit. And I see he's actually one of the few of the signings that regularly does start for Lopetegui, so he is quite a fan of him. So yeah, I think they really have. There's not much West Ham can complain about, in my opinion, for this window. I think they've absolutely bossed it from start to finish. They looked the most exciting team when it came to transfer news, and it kind of just pulled through all the way till deadline day. They just were the most exciting. And of the big 6 and up-and-coming 6, West Ham had the best transfer window. Yeah, how's about that? West Ham, who had a very mid-table transfer window last season, are now top of the transfer window ratings. And for them, Man United's an A, but for them, it's an A+. It has to be 90+% for their window. It was such a good window. All the other rivals can be jealous. No other team put as much effort into the overall squad as what West Ham did. Not even close. So yeah, that's my rating of the clubs. Next part of the video. I think I'll break this actually into a second video because this was a very long one. This will be my transfer window ratings for the big 6 and the up and coming 4. And my next videos will focus on the 10 best and 10 worst transfers of this transfer window. So stay tuned. And as always, come on you Spurs.